All right, Bill Cunningham, the great American. Let's continue now. After what happened on Friday evening and the protest all weekend long, there's quite a bit of confusion, I think, maybe a dichotomy between the reality of what the president ordered on Friday afternoon or evening as opposed to what the media is reporting. According to media accounts, the United States suspended the refugee program for 120 days, banned immigrants from 7 specific Muslim nations for 90 days, and ordered his administration to develop extreme vetting measures for immigrants from those countries to keep radical Islamic terrorists from coming in. Is it legal? Is it illegal? Who's got the power to do it? Is what the media reporting is accurate? A man who specializes in this area is the Honorable Byron Henry, Esquire, from Dallas, Texas. And Byron Henry, I think, welcome for the first time to the Bill Cunningham Show. Byron, how are you?
I'm doing well. Great to be with you, Billy.
Kind of review for the American people at this point what the president did on Friday, which sparked the protest all weekend long.
Well, there's a couple things, and it really falls into 2 categories. First and foremost, the President Trump had said during his campaign that he was absolutely going to review all the processes and all of the basically application and vetting processes for allowing immigrants or refugees or visas, allowing people into this country. He's done just that. He basically issued an executive order placing a 90-day temporary suspension of visas and that process from 6 or 7 countries that have been designated by prior administrations, President Bush's and President Obama's, as what's called countries of specific concern with respect to terrorism.
Yeah.
So those countries, there's a 90-day temporary stay on those countries, and of course an indefinite stay on Syria for now, mainly because of the war going on there and the fact that we've accepted so many refugees from that country already. So
yeah.
What really got, I think, the problem was how did it affect those that were either already here or in transit based on visas that were affected by the executive orders. And so most of the orders that have been issued by federal judges and most of the people that are up in arms, besides just those who don't like the idea that we can keep anyone out of this country, besides that group of people that think that anyone should be able to come here for any reason, are up in arms because there are already people here. Some people were in transit,
right.
Some people had jobs, some people were at the airport, and those people were, quote, detained at the airports because technically their visas, while they complied with the prior administration or prior to the executive orders process for vetting and for admission and for issuance, did not qualify under the executive order. So there was basically, that was up in the air, and so there was a lot of people being detained. I say a lot. There were hundreds, so it is a lot of people.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that that's where most of the orders focus, is not on the president's ability to suspend immigration or refugee programs for 90 days temporarily, but what do you do with the people that already have the right to come here, that already have granted visas or granted status? And so that's kind of what's getting itself worked out in the courts right now.
And so on Saturday, what several federal district courts ruled was that the individuals physically present in America under these immigrant status or refugee status that were physically present could stay here. And then the hearings were set. They found irreparable harm, and so they set the hearings off in a week or 2. So essentially, this was a partial victory. And as a normal American who voted for Donald Trump and supports what he normally does, especially what he did on Friday, I think made a lot of sense, because 3 of those countries, Iran, Sudan, and Syria, comprised the State Department's list of state sponsors of terrorism, and the other 4, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen, are terrorist safe havens. Those 7 governments don't exist. And so unlike the other 33 Muslim countries, there are 40 nations with Muslim majority populations. The other 33 are completely unaffected, which is more than 90% of all Muslims in the world, much less all the Muslims in Europe and all the Muslims in South America, the Muslims in Mexico, the Muslims in Canada, the Muslims in the Far East are all completely unaffected. This is a very limited ruling that just says the refugee program is suspended for 120 days and also banning immigrants from 7 Muslim nations for 90 days to develop extreme vetting. The only problem one might have is the timing, because there were a few hundred in the air landing on the ground. He could have made it start on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, in which case the TROs would not have been issued at all. But I ask you as an attorney, does Trump have the legal power to block these refugees or to change what's going on ultimately?
Well, that's a complicated question, but I'll answer it in two ways. First and foremost, the Constitution does not give any non-citizen the right to visit, live, work, or even come to this country for any reason. The Constitution vests the plenary power over immigration matters and border matters with Congress. So the ultimate say in all of this will be the Congress of the United States. But short of that, the President has been given a lot of authority, including the Justice Department and the Attorney General, a lot of authority when it comes to how to deal with the borders and how to deal with immigrants. So as long as President Trump is not directly defying an act of Congress, such as when President Obama basically tried to give work status to billions of people that were here illegally with children that the court stayed and people got up in arms about, then he has the authority to basically enforce the law within his discretion. And I will say that this is just temporary. So it's not even likely that this executive order will get its way up through the court system, because by the time it would get itself up into any significant hearing or trial or appellate court, let alone the Supreme Court, he's going to have completed the reviews of the administration and entered new immigration policies consistent with congressional, with the law to deal with these countries and the refugee plan going forward. So this is just temporary. But I believe that he has considerable discretion to determine how many and what refugees we're going to bring to this country. Now, you can argue, can he give Christian status? Is he allowed to discriminate based on religion? I think there is a law in the books with respect to visas and immigration status that you are not supposed to discriminate on the basis of religion. But I believe, if I read the executive order correctly, what he has done is said that he is going to give priority to religious minorities persecuted in those countries. That happens to be Christians in a lot of those Muslim countries that have not been getting their fair share of refugee status to come to this country from those majority Muslim countries. I don't think there's anything statutorily or constitutionally wrong with saying we're going to give priority to religiously persecuted minorities. We've done that in other countries as well. So I think he's within his discretion, and just to keep in mind that it's temporary and not permanent. He hasn't changed the law of the United States with respect to immigration or refugee status.
Attorney Byron Henry, in fact, once the refugee programs resume, members, quote, of minority religions may go to the front of the line. So in some countries, that means Christians and Yazidis would go to the front of the line. And in other countries, it means Muslims would go to the front of the line. And let's face it, under Obama, even though 10% of the Syrians are Christians, he only admitted 3%. Even though 90% of Syrians are Muslims, he admitted 97%. Even though 10% are Christians, he admitted only 3%. So it doesn't talk about a religious test. It says that if you're part of a prosecuted religious minority in that country of origin, you go to the front of the line. In some countries, that's going to be Muslims go to the front line above Christians, but the media doesn't report that, do they?
No, they sure don't, and it sounds a lot better to call it a Muslim ban, despite what you said about the fact that there are dozens of Muslim countries with majority Muslim populations that are not affected by this order, including Indonesia and a number of others. But I will say this, I just was speaking with someone recently who had visited a relative in Germany, and I can tell you what, a vast majority of the German people would have loved to have had an order in place to set up the proper procedure to accept Syrian refugees, whether it was 2 weeks or 90 days or 120 days, before they started allowing refugees, no questions asked, pouring over the borders, because there's been a lot of crime and there's been a lot of chaos, and they're not about shutting their doors. Anyone that could even argue that the United States is heartless, when you consider the amount of our budget, and we probably spend more per capita on other countries' problems and other countries' needs than any other country in the world, maybe all of them put together. But the idea that you just have to take everybody in, no questions asked, and then see if they cause harm later is ridiculous. And I think Germany and some other European countries learned a hard lesson about that and wish they had that to do all over again.
Now, I'm reading from an official government website. In the year 2016, Obama's last full year, 85,000 refugees. This doesn't count the immigrants, doesn't count the green card. 85,000 refugees were waved into America from the number one country was the Congo. Number two was Somalia. It goes down from there, East Asia, Burma. It goes down from there, Ukraine, Myanmar. But we waved in 85,000 refugees in the year 2016. Trump is proposing the number be 50,000 instead of 85,000, which isn't a big change because that's the average. Obama admitted in his first 6 years was 50,000, and approximately George Bush 43 admitted about 40,000 a year. So the 50,000 Trump is admitting is the same on average as the last 16 years, and that's not much of a controversy. And that doesn't count the 1 million immigrants we take in every year as new citizens, which can be up to a 6-year process. So we're taking in every year 1 million brand new immigrants. Trump says we're going to bring in 50,000 every year, refugees, a different category, which is the average of Bush 43 and the 8 years of Obama. And he's going to have a little 120-day wait to get vetting in order. How is that a big deal?
Well, that's not a very good story when you put it that way. Now,
I'm sorry.
Trump signs executive order banning Muslims.
Oh, that's a big story.
That's a clickbait headline right there. And I can only say that President Obama also had a number of immigration checks and immigration policies that are very similar to Donald Trump's. Now, he didn't sign an executive order of this nature, but it's because of the way refugees and immigration was handled under the Obama administration that it's necessary for a new president to push the pause button. And that's what he's done. He's pushed the pause button. He's going to get a handle on this. And as you said, he's probably going to end up admitting the same number of immigrants, work visas, H-1Bs, and refugees as President Bush 43 and Obama did on average over their tenures. That's exactly what's going to happen.
And from another website, the State Department issued 618,000 immigrant visas and 11 million non-immigrant, which is tourist and worker visas, in 2016 alone. So think about this. Trump is saying we will take 1 million immigrants every year, go through the 4, 5, 6-year process. We're going to keep admitting about 618,000 immigrant visas of one type or another. We're going to keep admitting about 11 million tourists and workers, in addition to the other 50,000, which are true refugees from war-torn areas. And this has caused America over the weekend to have a conniption fit. The answer is there's an outrage industry, whether it's the Women's March, whether it's the Mexico Wall, or whether it's Obamacare. The left is ready to march at a moment's notice through social media without the hell knowing what they're marching about.
And it is refreshing because, you know, like you, I am going to keep my eye on President Trump just as I did on President Bush and on President Obama to make sure that they do what I think is best for the country, and I'll criticize when I think they've made mistakes or they don't uphold what I think are conservative values that I believe in. But I will tell you that we may have a president once and for all that just doesn't care about that kind of stuff, because you might have seen some capitulation, some walk back by spokespeople. You might have actually seen people say, oh, we didn't realize this was going to be a big deal. It was a mistake. Let's get ourselves out of this. We're worried about our numbers. We're worried about politics and not about the safety of the country or doing things right. You might actually have a president this time that, despite whatever foibles you may think President Trump has, I don't think he's that worried about the liberal media criticizing him for this executive order, and that may be a refreshing change from administrations of both parties going back a lot of years.
Now, Byron Henry, attorney in Dallas, Texas, I'll say one other thing. For the last 8 years, we've had a president who begins his administration on his knees begging forgiveness in a mosque in Egypt. He went through 8 years of a policy of forgiveness, of sorrow, of retracting and retreating from the whole world, getting the soldiers out of Iraq, out of Afghanistan, saying how sorry we are. And during that whole time, Islamic terror metastasized. It got worse and worse and worse until a mushroom cloud's going to appear somewhere at some point. Whether it's San Bernardino, that's Obama. Orlando, that's Obama. Fort Hood, that's Obama. France, the Netherlands, Germany, bombings, Boston Marathon, all these things happened under Obama. Not one time during the metastasizing of Islamic terror under Obama, who apologized repeatedly for America's behavior, did the media ever blame Obama for the Pulse nightclub. Never blamed him for San Bernardino. Never blamed him when the terrorists blew up the Boston Marathon, or all these other attacks successful in Europe, Africa, Asia, and America, all over the world. It metastasized. I guarantee you that the first time there's a terrorist attack, the media is going to pin it on Trump when they never did that under Obama. Can you smell what I'm cooking?
I absolutely, and I'll do you one better. You think this is good? I mean, I had a friend tell me recently it feels like President Trump has been president for 9 days. It feels like he's already been in office a year because of all of the news stories and the outrage. But you think that's bad? Wait until he names a conservative Supreme Court nominee on Tuesday, and then he moves the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. I mean, you wait till he starts doing some of the other things he promised. Once he gets going, this is just a shot across the bow, and you're going to see so much. The left is going to go apoplectic over these things. And so we're in for a long ride. If 9 days is this exciting, and we've got 4 years of this, we're going to need a lot more ink and a lot more time to talk.
I want everyone to remember, locally and across America, that the Islamic terrorist threat metastasized under Obama, and now Trump has to deal with the consequences. And what he's doing is small and tepid and necessary. And when we're attacked the next time, the media is going to directly blame Trump, which is something they never did, ever did, to Obama when we had hundreds of terrorism attacks. Thousands were murdered by Islamic terrorists, and at no point did the media say that Obama's policies caused it. But the next terrorist attack, the media is going to blame the policies of DJT. Mark my words. Well, Byron Henry, you're a great American. Thanks for coming on the Bill Cunningham Show. But if the first 9 or 10 days have been like this, imagine the next 4 to 8 years. The media outrage will be palpable, and I can't wait.
Me neither. It's my pleasure, Bill.
Byron Henry, attorney in Dallas, Texas. Thank you very much. And Byron, you're a great American. Thank you very much. Let's continue with more. Byron, thank you.